Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What is going on, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris. We did have a week where we did not get to an episode, and unfortunately that is my fault because we're right in the middle of an OA challenge, but we were not going to allow that to stop us for 2 weeks in a row. So we are back. I am here with my dapper co-host, Chris Rasick, and I think we've got a good episode this round. We're going to kind of do a grab bag, but there is this 800-pound gorilla in the room that we need to address, and we're going to do that in this show. But first, I want to talk about that new swag you've got. Looks like you've got a pretty sweet new concert T-shirt, and so I'd like to hear what you've been up to in between the last time we chatted.
Yeah, I got my brand new Dave Matthews Band shirt on. I made the annual trip to Blossom Music Center for his concert. He usually makes Blossom once a year. And I'm there more times than I'm not. Got to be creeping up on 20 times now. I've been saying 15 shows for many, many years. So I think it's time to jump 5 more shows ahead and just call it 20 or close to. So, yeah, he's one of my all-time favorites. We got hooked up. My buddy Joel at cleverock.com I've done some reviews for him in the past, and he has a hookup with Tim Reynolds, the guitarist, and he actually got us not backstage, but we'll call it side stage. There's actually on the left side, if you're facing the stage at Blossom. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a half covered, half outdoor amphitheater, right? And to the left is a special section where they had a friends and family lounge, and it's open bar. They had a bunch of Bird Dog whiskey. They had Dreaming Tree wines, which is Dave Matthews wine that he sells, and then a bunch of craft beer for free. And so free booze usually leads to good stories. And so as part of this special access that we had access to a couple bathrooms that were available only to us. They weren't available to just anyone. So
now, no lines at a concert for the bathroom is like that's a high level perk right there.
Well, it wasn't no lines. We can't say that because my wife and I we picked apparently the song that we picked to go to the restroom was also a popular bathroom break for a bunch of other people because there was a little bit of a wait. So behind us, there was this inebriated woman and her friend. And, one of those, like, she's kind of making this joke over and over again about me and my wife going into the bathroom together because they were called family restrooms. And it was one of those jokes where it's like, yeah, I know you really got to go and you're somehow hoping to jump ahead of us or something like that. It's just one of those annoying. And then she was drunk, so she kept saying the joke over and over again. So finally the door opens. I let my wife go first because she was getting really annoyed at the woman behind us. And I was holding it together a little bit better. So I let her go first. And my wife goes in, and sure enough, the woman makes the joke again. She goes, you aren't going in with her? You guys are a family, right? And so I tried to make a joke about having really good aim, and I asked her to pee between her legs at the same time. But, my wife said no or something, and she didn't laugh or anything. She was, kind of got a little bit of sourpuss going on because she must have had to really, really have to go. So, and then her friend, who's also drunk and slurring and babbling, they said something about her husband and peeing in the shower or whatever. And I had remembered, for whatever reason, like, why this takes up space in my brain, don't ask. But I remember seeing an article about it being good to pee in the shower. There's actually benefits to it, right? So I said that. I said, well, they say it's good. It definitely conserves water, and I don't know, maybe it's an exfoliating factor on your feet. I said, I don't know, and so the lady's like, right, it's good for you, right? Yeah. She goes, there's a reason, there's a name for it, and I kind of looked at her and I said, oh yeah. She goes, yeah, golden shower.
Oh,
And
geez.
and I said,
Oh.
oh no. I said, no, that's not what that means. And I said, and be really careful when you Google it, when you decide you want to find out what it really means. So that's
yeah.
not what that is. Yeah, and her friends just like looking at her, and she goes, "What?" And then luckily I was saved by my wife coming out, and then it was my turn.
Did your wife leave to go back to the friends and family area and just make you walk out of the bathroom alone to confront them again, or did she wait on you and deal with those ladies?
She waited off to the side. She she stepped a good distance away from the line. So, but yeah, it was. I ended up seeing her later in the show, and she was not having a good time. I ended up seeing her in the patio area, and it was one of those like elbows on her knees and head in her hands.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
The international symbol for I've overdone it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's funny. I'll be honest. I'm a little envious that you went and saw Dave Matthews. I'm probably not as big of a fan as you are, but I am a fan, and not just of his music, but I think of him as a person. I've been happy to see him in like movies and skits where he's willingly makes fun of himself, and stuff like that. And I think he seems like a good dude. Yeah. Other than just a great musician. So,
yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to see him again. Him and Dave and Tim, they do an acoustic show sometimes, and we have plans to go. Yeah, upstate New York. So that's take awesome. a road trip, overnight trip for it, and hopefully it's not too far from Buffalo. So I'm hoping there are some Anchor Bar original buffalo wings. For nice. Lunch either that day or the day after. So
yeah, that would be awesome. I haven't been to Buffalo in a really long time, but I actually, even though it's a little run down, I do like that city. So
it is fun. Yeah.
Well, there's not a great way for me to transition into this, but we're going to go ahead and do it. So there's an 800-pound gorilla in the room, and we need to address it. And it's that dirty R word that nobody likes, recession. It's, if you watch news at all, any flavor of news, whatever your flavor of choice is, that word is thrown around a lot, along with really ugly looking stock charts and lots of graphics with arrows pointing down, or crashing through floors and all kinds of things. And I don't know. The last time I checked, it looks like I don't know. I think the stock market lost like 400 points or something today. And this is a Friday when we're recording this. So it wasn't great today. I don't think that they've officially called it a bear market yet, but every day they're like, oh well, one more day and this will officially be a bear market, or I don't know, whatever the pundits say. And if you happen to have any money in crypto, which I will admit that I do, but I am not a crypto genius. I was not a crypto genius on the way up. I definitely am not a crypto genius while it's on its way down, but that is absolutely cratering. And everyone is worried. The reports that they do from business owners, those are going into negative territory. Consumer sentiment is going into negative territory, and everyone thinks that we're probably going to go into a recession. We've seen just this week the Fed raised interest rates by 75 basis points. They expect another 75 basis points in July. And so money's going to get a little bit tighter. You may not be able to get as much credit as you used to. It's going to be more expensive to buy things like a house or a car or whatever else you might want to buy. And the reason behind this, the reason they do this to the money, if you don't know already, and I'm going to give you a very unscholarly education on this because I'm definitely no genius when it comes to the market or economics. But essentially, they want to slow down money because that will slow down buying. It will slow down, the economy, and then hopefully we see inflation start trending downward a little bit, or at least flattening off, because inflation is also one of those things that's been, at 40-year highs and things like that over the past couple of months. So a lot of economic indicators don't look great. And of course, the question that I'm starting to see more and more often, because we're Amazon sellers, we're entrepreneurs, we're business owners. So of course, our sentiment starts going the same direction as other business owners, other consumers. And we start to say, oh, well, what if, what if this happens? And that's just it's a really easy way to put yourself in a bad mood. So let's talk about what a recession might mean for the Amazon seller, what it might mean for your pocketbook as a seller, what it might mean for your sales. I actually think there are some silver linings. I think there are silver linings for deals and opportunities and competition. And so I kind of want to dive into all of those topics a little bit. And then I've got some factoids from prior recessions and things like that I think are pretty interesting that you don't hear on the news. And I think they're actually a good thing. So, Chris, what's your take? I'm curious what you think about, what you've read, what you've heard, what you've been through. I mean, you and I have been through a few cycles in our lifetimes. I actually like what Elon Musk called a recession. And it's not the nicest term, but he called it an economic enema. It cleans out a lot of the garbage businesses, the over-levered businesses, things like that. But we'll get into more of that here in a little bit. But I want your take. What do you think?
From my experience, these economic downturns are worse in headlines than they are in reality. Mm-hmm. That's in fact my personal experience. Some of my best personal professional achievements have come at the expense of the general economy and any shred of positivity in economic news. Mm-hmm. I was writing. I spent 10, 12 years as a loan officer writing mortgages prior to the foreclosure crisis. It wasn't my fault, I promise. But I didn't sell those adjustable rate mortgages that everybody was hurt by. But
we'll get you in at 2%, but in 5 years, it's like 18.
Right? Yeah, that first adjustment 5% cap. Yeah, that was a bit ugly. But I'm not a good salesman. Like I've been in sales for way longer than I ever expected to be, but I'm really not a good salesman because if you can figure it out and it's not good for you, I'm not going to push you into it. I just kind of, I can't sell A type personalities. It's mm-hmm. I get along with the B type people, and we just kind of sit and talk and go over details and figure out what's best. So, but I was writing loans and then, foreclosure crisis hit. Credit guidelines, underwriting guidelines tightened up big time as a knee-jerk reaction. So less loans were getting approved, so you had to churn through 3 times as many people and phone calls and applications just to try to make the same money. And you get pretty resentful pretty quick. And it got so bad, and I was commission only. So it got so bad, I had to get a part-time job. Ended up meeting my wife though. So that was a positive.
Silver lining.
Exactly. Yeah. But got a part-time job. And then eventually I flipped into subprime auto sales. I was actually setting up appointments and ended up being a used car salesman. painful to say out loud, but did that for a while, and that was kind of after everyone's credit went into the toilet. There were a bunch of people that needed to reestablish credit, and it wasn't work that I was proud of, and interest rates were ugly, but again, being the salesman with a conscience, like I like to say I am, if you could figure out it wasn't a good deal, I wasn't going to make you sign the paperwork with my little tricks. So and then I flipped that into so then they only did that for a few years, and then when Dodd-Frank Act was passed because of the foreclosure crisis, they enacted this. There's like 900 pages of government guidelines that mortgage servicers and mortgage companies had to follow, and big banks. So I ended up getting a job with a mortgage servicer, the mortgage servicing wing of a bank, and my job was compliance. So I actually they hired me to help install these guidelines that the government had. So again, so it's all this, this negativity has been good for me. So I know that's not typical, but then, and I've talked to enough people, and I've done enough applications in multiple financing realms, and people think things are worse than they actually are. I think a lot of people kind of tee off on what they hear, the headlines, instead of really looking at their own personal situation. And I think that is a parallel with how it's going to be with Amazon sellers and their stores.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. So I have a similar story. In 2008, I was selling insurance, and I did have to pivot a little bit. I was really focusing on life insurance and things like that, and that became something that was more of a not a need, but more of a want in 2008. And so I pivoted over to things that people absolutely had to have legally. They had to have home insurance. They had to have auto insurance. And of course, I was like, okay, well, everyone wants to save money, so let's run through as many applications as we can and try to save people money. And that's how we kept food on the table. And I too like to think that I am a salesman with a conscience. I get emails on occasion, people asking about things like the OA challenge and other stuff. And they're like, should I take it? And I'm like, do you have money after the OA challenge to spend on inventory? And they're like, well, no, I don't. And I email them back, and I'm like, then please don't take the challenge. I'm selling myself right out of, sales, but it was the right thing to do. And that, leads to good things down the road. And some of the things that I'm going to say, I think, are not necessarily going to feel good. However, there are things that I think we have to think about in a capitalist system, as capitalists ourselves, as entrepreneurs. And we just have to realize it's part of the ebb and flow of economies. And there are a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. Number one, not everyone participates in a recession. And I think we need to remember that. There's a quote that I came across. A recession is when your neighbor loses their job. A depression is when you lose your job. And we have to realize that, as we sell on Amazon, not everyone is going to be participating. I am going to do my very best not to participate in any coming or future recessions. And I would certainly hope that anybody listening kind of has the same mindset. And I think there are some ways that you can do that. Number one, recessions actually bring out opportunities for people who are ready to go and scoop them up. Well, you actually, thank you for this, but you wrote this week's 5 Things Friday, and one of the articles in there was Revlon. They've filed Chapter 11. Now, that does not mean that they're going to be going under. They're just going to be reorganizing. But that's not going to be the case for every brand or every consumer product goods company or things like that as we maybe go through some rough economic times. There are going to be brands that are like, you know what, we've got to close up shop. We need to sell out of whatever we can, as much as we can, to get whatever cash we can to pay the bills that are left. And that's going to be opportunity for Amazon sellers in two ways. Number one, hopefully you can get really cheap products to sell. And number two, well, what happens when the supply of something that is, selling dries up? Well, if demand stays the same and supply dries up, the price goes up just naturally. So I think that will happen in more than a few cases. The other thing is, even before we were talking about recession, there are reports out that they expect over the next few years for like 50,000 retail stores to be closing. Well, I've been around long enough to see a lot of retail stores close. Sports Authority is one. Shopco is another. And there have been several others that have, Radio Shack was another one. There have been several.
Toys R Us.
Toys R Us, thank you. That's a great one. The opportunity that has been had by Amazon sellers, especially, to be able to go and grab massive amounts of inventory for pennies on the dollar has been incredible. And so the only thing I can see is, if you have capital available, then you're going to be primed for those kinds of opportunities. And I think that's one of the cool things about arbitrage. Maybe a local chain, can you imagine if like Meijer decided to close up shop? It's not something that everyone has, but in your area, you could hit everything in Ohio and everything in Michigan, and be able to send that in and sell it on Amazon to a much larger marketplace and have that opportunity there. But I want to go back a little bit to that. Not everyone participates in a recession. There are going to be people who are very liquid. There's going to be those people who have high paying jobs that don't go anywhere, or people who, have a ton of stock options. Companies, unicorns still exist. Companies still go public during recessions. And those people are maybe not going to participate in an economic downturn. And those people also have money, and they're going to, buy products on Amazon. Their partners maybe are going to be upset that they're not going to the Hamptons for the third time in a year. And instead they're going to spend a little money on, buying themselves something pretty. But then there's another thing that I heard that was really interesting. Do you listen to the All In podcast?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I've heard you mention it though.
So the All In podcast it's a podcast of billionaires, essentially, who kind of have a round table. And it's fascinating to hear them talk. There's David Sachs and a few other guys. I don't know. David Sachs is kind of, I don't know, he's rough around the edges, so he sticks out at me all the time. But there's some really smart guys there. And they talked about, during economic downturns, there is often a change in the talent market. So right now, we kind of have this talent market, coders, software engineers, that kind of thing, where the Googles and Microsofts of the world have been just throwing money at them. You want $600,000 and you're just out of college? Absolutely. Can we also give you a 7-week sabbatical every year, a free lunch every day, and a ping pong table in your office? And that's how they've been getting talent. But as things change up a little bit and companies start laying people off to weather a storm, that talent market gets a little bit tighter, and those people tend to start putting back on their suits and going back into the office and saying, "Oh, I'm happy to work 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I'll go ahead and skip that 7-week sabbatical this year because I don't really need that." Because it's kind of it's a fight to keep your job. You have to prove that you're worth what you're being paid. And so what we're going to see, in my opinion, is if we do see a recession, we're going to see the people who do have jobs, they're going to be working more, trying to show that they bring the company value and things like that, which man, that would suck. I don't wish that on anybody, but that's going to mean that people are going to have less time to go shopping, less time to go out and things like that. And so what's going to happen? Well, if they do have some money, they're going to turn to online shopping for the items that they need. Maybe they buy a few less items that are discretionary, but there's still verticals like grocery. There's people still want and need vitamins and Tylenol and all those kind of things. So I think there will be plenty of opportunity there, and it may actually. I don't think it'll be another COVID, but I think it would actually be a boom for some categories on Amazon.
Yeah, and then throw in, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about the speculation of the beauty category as offices were opening back up and bringing people back, and less there's less work from home. We anticipated the numbers spiking in things like beauty, clothing. People were going to buy there might have been some weight gain while you were working from home. So new clothes, new makeup, there's a whole lot of new stuff if you're forced to go back into the office. And that was before any momentum was building towards a recession. So once throw in the recession, and that's that should snowball from there if it comes to fruition.
Exactly. Funnily enough, last month, the clothing, shoes, and jewelry category on Amazon was the largest. It had the largest number of ASINs added to the category of all the categories on Amazon. So there's definitely opportunity there. I want to back up some of the things I said with facts. So the worst economic period in American history, the Great Depression. What do you think the unemployment rate was nationally?
See, now I've read this, and I know it's not as high as recent numbers, I believe. Right? Not to spoil it, but
it is still the highest number ever, but only by a very little bit. So during the last, they call it a recession, but during the last little economic blip that we had during COVID, the unemployment rate hit about 20% or like 20.5%. And a lot of that was in the service industry. Restaurants were closing down. People weren't traveling. So they're, hotels, airlines, that kind of stuff. During the Great Depression, the worst economic period in American history, the unemployment rate was 24.2% at its highest. And I don't think that, the general public doesn't look at history enough to kind of see what happened, which I think is important. And so, we kind of think, the Great Depression, bread lines, kids living in the street, all that kind of stuff. It was that bad for some people, but there were plenty of people who were still wealthy. There were plenty of people who were still employed. There were plenty of people who still owned businesses. And the ones that weathered that economic storm actually came out a lot stronger on the back end of that. I took my family last weekend on here in Winter Park nearby. We have the oldest running boat tour of a chain of lakes. It's been running continuously since 1938. And all the houses on these chain of lakes, they're like $4 million and up, and a bunch of them were built all the way back in the 20s. And so we stop at one house, and the tour guide is like, so this house was actually built right in the middle of the Great Depression by the guy who owned the Packard Automobile Company. And now Packard ended up going on to its demise later on down the road. But someone like him had money to build a mansion in the middle of a Great Depression. There's still going to be a lot of those people if we have an economic downturn coming up. I don't know. I guess I'm curious, where if something happens, and there is a downturn, where are you going to be looking for opportunity? What kind of things are you going to be doing?
I'll definitely keep my eye on businesses, because that's I don't think you can stress that point enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the tipping point is closer than maybe it would be under normal circumstances. Not that a pending recession is a normal circumstance, but we're kind of like pandemic. We're kind of just coming out of the pandemic and then moving into this recession. So it's kind of a double dip in negative economic news. So I keep thinking about all these businesses that have trouble hiring in the first place. So I think there are a whole lot of businesses out there that they opened back up, and the lockdown eased, and they still had trouble because they couldn't get people to work, and they have staffing issues, and the supply chain issues are well documented. So it makes me think that they're a little bit closer to the tipping point than they normally would be. So it could come swiftly. So I'm definitely going to keep my eyes peeled. It's important to if you talk to other sellers, or if you have any kind of I have a mastermind group. Definitely we'll be talking about that, and discussing things, and just in general, I think it's important to anytime you can talk to your peers. You and I didn't do the podcast last week, and I canceled the mastermind, so I was at a loss. I started stuttering and stammering in the bathroom mirror, and reading quotes to my dogs just to I was lost without you guys. But in the groups, and anybody in the Discord, the VIP, the OA Challenge VIP Discord, make sure you talk, and just kind of chop it up a little bit. It's good to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on, because someone is bound to have an idea that you didn't think of, or a perspective that'll change things for you, and might make something click for you. We had a local, it was just a one location soccer store in town here that went under, and it was just, I found it just doom scrolling Facebook one day, and my one of my good friends, his little brother is a big soccer guy, and he commented something, oh, I hate to see you go, I've been buying my soccer gear for 25 years from you, and and it's you end up popping in and seeing what kind of liquidation sales are going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, but like you said, there's an opportunity, and there's a real life example. So that's those sort of things I'll definitely be looking at. But a whole lot of business as usual is what I'm going to be doing. You mentioned the Great Depression, and the government cheese lines and all this stuff, but businesses were started, jobs were maintained. I'd venture to guess that toothpaste was still bought. Soap was still a commodity used in restrooms at the time, and bathrooms. Look at what you sell as an Amazon seller. It's important to keep the stuff in perspective. Unless your store is completely $300 Lego sets, that guy, that seller might be in trouble. If what happens, if what we think happens, what we think is going to happen actually happens. But I sell a lot of staples. I sell a lot of just regular stuff. Grocery, health and household, beauty and personal care. Those categories. There's still a very big market. I don't think it's going to be trimmed down too much, even under a worst case scenario.
Yeah, not at all. I think about grocery especially. Everyone has to eat, and they're going to have to get those items from somewhere. But if you are tightening your belt a bit, well, what's one place that maybe I can splurge a little bit, and that can be, a couple of extra snacks that you might like, whatever that is. Maybe it's a sweets, maybe you're a savory person, but it doesn't feel so bad to buy a couple extra boxes of Cheez-Its, but you can't really justify, buying a brand new Bluetooth, headset or whatever. And you can make those old dusty ones work for, another year or two while we weather this thing. And what you brought up about that soccer store, I think we should bear in mind a few things. Number one, it sucks to see a local business owner go under, but unfortunately, it's just one of those things that happens. And so, if anybody ever feels like, oh well, I'm going in there and I'm scalping his products and I'm buying them for way under what they're worth, you're really actually doing them a favor. They've set the price. Number one, they need any capital that they can get out of it before they close down. And so it's okay to go in and say, hey, I've got a little bit of cash. I'm willing to, buy up what I can. And it's kind of just the nature of capitalism. It's not always the prettiest thing, and you can still practice capitalism with a conscience, but you don't have to feel bad or feel like you're taking advantage of somebody just because they've got to get out, from under whatever it is, whatever business problem they may have. And it may be of their own doing. Maybe they're over levered. Maybe they're just ready to retire, which actually it brings me to another point, another opportunity that I kind of foresee. Not only are we probably headed into a recession, but do you know how many people, baby boomers especially, retire every day?
I do not.
Well, I don't know either, but I can tell you how many retire that own a business. 10,000. 10,000 baby boomers retire every single day who own some sort of small business.
Wow.
You want to know what percentage of those baby boomers that retire have a family member or a child who wants to take over their business?
That would be a low number. I do not know what it is.
It is between 17 and 19%.
Wow.
So and I get it. My son does not want to sell stuff on Amazon or build software. My son wants to play video games on YouTube and Twitch, and that's how he plans on making money as an adult. He's probably got a rude awakening coming, and I'll be there to say I told you so. But I'll do it nicely. Right. But we're going to see these kind of opportunities that are. It's not necessarily because of a recession. It's just because people are ready to retire. They've worked into their 60s or 70s. And not all of these are going to be service businesses. Some of them are going to be the Ace Hardwares in your town. Some of them are going to be the local sports shop, the local toy store, all those kind of things that, there will be opportunity to pick up that kind of inventory. Or another thing, I like to think that we're not just Amazon sellers here. We're entrepreneurs. We want to be business owners, and I like diversifying. But the other opportunity there, especially if you have a little capital available, or you're really good at creatively coming up with solutions that work for both you and another person, there's going to be opportunities there to possibly pick up businesses on the cheap that you could then run or hire an operator for. And if you find some upsides in those businesses, for example, maybe there's a local plumber or other service business that has never used the internet or software. Well, there's a massive opportunity. And I could give examples like, the window washer who started using Google My Business and has grown his business through several territories and now hires other window washers in other states to work for him, because he's leveraging, the internet and software to actually be able to do things that other window washers could do, but they don't, because they'd rather be out scrubbing windows than dealing with a tech stack. And so there are going to be a lot of opportunities like that as well if you're interested in more than just Amazon. Trying to think what else. I know there are a couple other things I wanted to hit, but I mean, are there any opportunities that you might be interested in if those kind of things come up?
Yeah, being able to name them is a different thing. But no, I mean, the one thing I've been waiting for, both on a personal and a professional level, is for this housing market to ease up.
Mm-hmm.
I still know a bunch of people in the business, so I won't call it a bubble. I won't talk about popping a bubble.
They don't like that.
No, I know too many realtors and servicers to call it that. But the like the Samuel L. Jackson character, the rent is too damn high. Homes don't appreciate this fast. And you don't have to be all that old to have been through this before to know that it just doesn't go that quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have all these things coming together, and the recession, it does have its hand in multiple industries. You can definitely say that. Plus, and I mentioned personally too, we're trying to move into a different school district for the littlest munchkin. But I've been waiting. I can't. Everybody says it. Oh, it's such a great time to sell your house. And I look at what the estimates are on our house. We've been here 10 years, and yeah, sure. The numbers are great. They're mind-boggling. When you think about what we bought it for 10 years ago. But guess what? We would have to buy in the same market. It's not like rent has dropped. And we could just kind of find a place to lay low for a while, and while we lay on stacks of cash from all the equity that we just cashed in selling this house, we have to buy. We have to find someplace else to live. That's the seller's market's a little bit easier said than done. If you're not really thinking about the whole picture all the way around. So that so from my wallet's perspective, I would love to see home values ease up a little bit. And then, professionally, being in, the mortgage industry, I have a lot of warm phone calls, people that I knew and did business with, related to the housing industry. So I'd love to be able to flip some homes. I'd love, and I'm not, I know there's more to it than HGTV or whatever, but I'm a little bit more dangerous than, somebody just off the street, watching one of those shows. So I'd love to do it. I think it'd be fun. Number one.
Yeah.
And it sure seems like a great opportunity if you play it the right way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be a lot of fun to flip a house. I'm kind of in the same boat. I've been, my wife's wanted a house for a long time. We moved down here. We leased because I wasn't sure if I was going to stay here, and I've always had this kind of feeling like we kind of need to wait because I saw the prices continue going up and to the right, and I was like, it can't continue like this, and so I'm patiently waiting, to be able to find a place for ourselves as well. I want to talk a little bit about. Even if you don't take advantage of all the opportunity, I think that will be out there during a recession. There are some things that you can do to kind of come out the other side that other people may not think about. But one of the biggest things, and if you look at businesses through other recessions, other depressions, things like that, number one, lots of really great businesses with staying power were started in the middle of economic downturns. I guess maybe one of the biggest and most famous and longest running would be General Electric. That one was started in the middle of the Depression, and it's still running now. There are a few others. I think Microsoft was another one. Google started right before the tech bubble popped back in the early 2000s. But now some of those are some of the biggest companies in the world. And so one of the things I think you can do to stay ahead of other people is actually just to stay in the game. Like whatever it takes to scratch and claw your way to, keep your business afloat, you'll see a couple of things on the other side when when there is light at the end of that tunnel. And number one, you're probably going to see less competition. Every business, no matter what vertical you're in, restaurant business, hotel business, Amazon business, there a lot more businesses start and then shut down, just because that's the nature of the game. It's a hard game to play. Not everyone is able to win, whether it's they just don't have what it takes to have a business, or maybe they're dispassionate about it, or maybe they just haven't made good decisions. And so what happens when we go into an economic downturn is the people who made bad decisions or over leverage themselves, or whatever other business blunder you can make, they're going to end up not making it through. And then that's going to clear the field out a little bit. And if you can continue on, even if your business is a little bit smaller than it was before, well, you're going to be primed when the numbers do start going up and to the right in the stock market and everything like that. You're going to be primed to take advantage of people getting out and spending more and making more money and things like that. So, I mean, if nothing else out of this conversation, make sure to keep going. Keep your business afloat, because that in itself is a huge factor in coming out the other side smelling like roses, in my opinion.
Absolutely. We talked about the same thing, when I was writing loans, and when things got harder, the things that my manager would say is, the people who can make it through this, whether it be whether you're a loan officer or a realtor or whatever, it's going to thin the herd, and the people who were able to stick with it and make it through, they had a bigger piece of the pie when it was all said and done. And that's true for multiple industries. We had the price tanking episode, and we talked about some aggressive pricing tactics that we're seeing around Amazon. If things get a little bit tighter, a little bit harder, I don't think that's a strategy that is going to endure, for the long term, so if you're the ones and really, and we've talked about sourcing, we've talked about how most people are going to be in the clearance aisle, but it's, the more profitable stuff, the longer term profitability are in the corners of the aisles that people don't go down, so if you can find those products, if you have a good sourcing strategy, if you're willing to, not only scan the UPC code, but manually type it in and find products that way, I'm willing to bet that you're going to be better off. If you're diligent about tracking your replens and you stay on it, because I don't think most sellers are, my guess is you're going to be better off, and if you take the time to go back over all those lead lists that you have, from your entire career, and go back to them and just kind of double check, or have your VA double check, there's going to be opportunity there. And again, I'm willing to bet that those people are going to be just fine through all this.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. I guess maybe the last thing I want to talk about is as we do come into, or maybe as we are going into a recession or economic downturn, while some people are not going to be able to weather the storm, there are going to be other people who are going to be looking for side hustles and ways to make a little extra cash. And Amazon, of course, is probably top of the list for a lot of people. A lot of people know that, well, I can shop there, and if they do a little bit of digging, they're going to realize they could sell there too. And I know this is a question that you came up with, but I'm going to ask you first. So if you were just getting started, on Amazon, what would you do now compared to maybe what you did when you got started originally? And I guess what are some of the biggest things that you've learned that you wish you learned a little bit faster?
Well, I didn't expect you to turn the tables on me, but I would I'd be a little bit slower to buy certain software and subscriptions outside of probably like a core 3 or 4. I mean, I started, inventory labs that I think the interesting question is, say things went bad for you and you had to cut costs, the reverse order of things that you cut bait on, what's towards the bottom of the list, what's the absolute last thing that you would ever get rid of. And I think probably the majority of, if we ran a poll, the majority of, would be things like inventory labs and Keepa. I would guess those would be 1 and 2. I'm a big fan of tactical arbitrage. That would be, I'd hang on to that for dear life as long as I could. But there's certain things, that you kind of buy stuff. I mentioned it in the Chris Anderson interview. It seems, I think people get caught up in what they see as like a starter kit, and because you see people like, oh, I need to go out and buy a Rolo, if they have the capital, it's like, you don't need a Rolo. I was talking to the one cashier at a discount store, and I said, you can use Avery labels. I think they're called 30 ups. You can print SKUs, FN SKUs on those if you need to. That's how I started out.
Me too.
So it's, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can get caught up in thinking that you need. I'd kind of be careful and just get things as I know that I need them, as opposed to seeing what somebody else is using. But then at the same time, there's a whole other side of it. There are certain things that I would get immediately. I referenced, I think it was in the YouTube comments too, that there are things that you get and you wonder why you waited so long. I would get a repricer much faster. That's because manually repricing is a task I don't miss one iota.
Not at all.
No,
I don't even know. I mean, yeah, maybe if you have just a handful of ASINs that you're selling, sure. But I think maybe once you get to 20, I don't even know if you can be competitive manually repricing.
Yeah, I mean, if you have anything that has any kind of decent rank, and especially like at first I didn't understand it. I would reprice something and I would wait for it to take effect, and then I'd go check it, and somebody was a penny under me. It's like, it's like this Keystone Cop skit, and like I just keep going back and forth, and it's like, and it's just it's a headache that I didn't need, and I didn't realize how easy it was to get rid of that headache. So that's, repricer is definitely something that I would do very quickly. I get set up with a prep center immediately. We have somebody in our mastermind who is relatively new to a prep center, and she, in the mastermind meetings, kind of weighed the pros and cons and kind of mulled it over with us out loud. And so we talked to her, and sure enough, she's seeing it now. I mean, you could basically double your output, and provided you have the capital, but just, assuming you're managing your debt load properly, you can send, almost in an instant, you could start sending in twice as much, if you maintain, if you're prepping stuff out of your house or whatever, personally, wherever you're at, and then you add a prep center. I mean, it's a level of growth that can happen so quickly and so easily, but it's intimidating to the new seller. There's a whole lot of questions, and you see it anytime. Well, I think when we're recording this, I think you had Chaz on the OAC. I was sourcing, so I didn't get to listen, but I remember in the very first OA challenge, there's the questions that I had. It's funny now looking back on it, but it's just such a daunting thing. I mean, there's the cost involved. There's onboarding is seems weird, and then you trusting someone with your inventory. You have to send it off to most of the time another state. You never get to see it. You have to take their word for it if something happens in shipping or items are missed. And it's a relationship with a healthy amount of trust involved. So there's a bunch of intimidating factors of getting into a prep center, but it's on my list of things that once I did it, I wondered why it took me so long, because the benefits of it far outweigh any stress or anxiety of the fear of the unknown while you're getting ready or mulling the decision over.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks to getting into a prep center is the thing you mentioned about a lot of people see it as a cost. And you don't necessarily weigh a couple of things. Number one, especially if you're using a tax-free prep center, you don't necessarily weigh in the fact that, well, you're going to save on sales tax. And so maybe you can make the cost a wash, depending on your average cost of goods sold. But then also the return on time invested is so huge. If you're sourcing 4 hours a day and then you're prepping and shipping 4 hours a day, but immediately I can now source for 8 hours a day with zero prep work. I mean, I'm not going to say that you're going to be able to double your sourcing capabilities immediately, but I would imagine that over time you should be able to pretty easily. I mean, because we both know that you double the time input doesn't necessarily mean double the output, just the way people are. Sure. But you're going to save on stress and frustration. And, I don't know, if I have to prep things from the house, which I do very rarely, if I happen to see the boxes sitting in my office while I'm sourcing for more product, they're always in the corner of my eye, and I'm thinking about two things at once, and I can't do as good of a job. But I know that is now all taken care of for me. And so I can really focus and the output ends up being higher. But yeah, I think that's an absolutely great point.
And it frees up bandwidth. I mean, it's just, you can only make so many decisions. There is such a thing as decision fatigue. And, and whether that be, deciding when to prep or if you're going to prep that night and stuff, if you're bringing it in house, all that's off the table with a prep center. You mentioned seeing boxes out of the corner of your eye. It's funny. I'm in a retail arbitrage groove right now. I've got a real good system. It's so good. In fact, it has far outpaced my motivation to pack up boxes and ship them out. So as a result, there's crap all over my house. Right. So, and I mentioned I've got mom who comes over, and recession, her days might be numbered if there's a recession. I don't know. We'll play it by ear. But she did laugh. I did tell her that joke. She didn't listen to the last episode where I joked about firing her, but I told her the joke and she laughed about it. So I figured I figured I'd head up, instead of her just randomly catch me one of those. Christopher, we need to talk. But anyway, so there's still the stuff she did last week sitting around when she gets there the next week, right? And it was one of those weeks where I just I lost track of my motivation, and but I mentioned something as we were kind of chit chatting, and I said, well, no, tomorrow I'm going to go source. I got to go get more inventory, and she looked at me and she said, I don't mean to be dense, and she's looking around at all the crap laying all over the place. She goes, why would you get more? and it was like a verbal slap in the face. It's like, because that's what we do. But I didn't know how to answer, but at the same time, I'm like, How dare you speak those words out loud?
No other Amazon seller would ask me this kind of question.
Right. I can't believe you would even suggest it. It was heresy.
Oh, that's funny. But to the layperson, it makes total sense.
Right.
But I think to every Amazon seller, they're like, oh, I totally get that. Yeah, I've got a 300 unit shipment sitting here, but I mean, these deals aren't going to buy themselves, so I got to get out there and get them.
Yeah. Why would you buy more? Mother, you know nothing of the beast. Must be fed.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think a lot of what you said is a really important for people to take home. There are, I don't know, if I were getting started today, if I had, I don't know, maybe I was restarting my business and everything kind of went down the drain. What would I do? Or I guess what would I do differently than when I started? Is number one, I would probably never scan another barcode while I'm outsourcing. I did that for a long time, and that was kind of the standard practice when I got started. And even back then, there were a lot of items where UPCs were wrong, and so of course you scan something, and then it doesn't show up, and then all of a sudden you're looking on Amazon and there it is. So I missed out on probably tons and tons of profit that way. But that would be the biggest thing. The second thing is I would never touch a clearance item ever again. If I were getting started, I would, I know that there is still profit laying on clearance shelves right now, but you got to sell it fast or sit on it. You can strike a lucky vein and maybe even follow clearance through your state or even through multiple states. But if you're not moving things really, really quickly, it's going to tank, especially in today's market. It's just much more mature. But if I were doing retail arbitrage, I would spend all my time in regular aisles and I would look at every single item and I would just type in keywords and find the bundles and multi-packs that made sense and probably sell on all of those. And I'd make sure to have Keepa and really understand it. I think the people who don't understand Keepa and the people who do understand Keepa, it's like unlocking. It's like the cheat code. It's up, down, down, AABB for Amazon. If you understand Keepa, because you can hedge your downside risk, you can pretty much figure out what a product is going to do in the future. There are a couple softwares I'd make sure I'd want to have, but Keepa would be the one that, you can take Keep out of my cold dead hands, if I can borrow a phrase from Charlton Heston.
So what would you do more of that if you started over from scratch, knowing what you know now?
I would spend a lot more time. I would spend more time learning on the front end than I did the last time. So I tend to be a little bit more of an action taker, and I'll learn by putting in my reps. But I wish that when I started, that there was something that could have guided me a little bit to make better decisions. And because I had to make all the bad decisions. I had to buy liquidation and lose money on that. I had to figure out that clearance, it made some money. I won't say that it was a negative ROI on the clearance overall while I sold that stuff, but it was not sustainable. It wasn't anything I could do long term. I was always looking for the next thing to sell and not being able to go back and say, oh, well, let me get that item again. I can't. It's been clearanced out. It's gone. But the biggest thing is the education piece. If I had been able to take a course, or if I had been able to find someone to mentor me, I did finally find Chris Green's book, which helped out a ton, but if I could have, learned Keepa, I didn't start using Keepa till like 2 years in, and I had no idea it even existed. So I would, and I'm stealing this directly from Alex Hormozy, but he talks about if he were starting all over again, he would spend all of his disposable income on acquiring skills until he could not acquire any more skills. And I think I would probably try to do something similar while also sourcing and all of that stuff. Yeah, and then I would source like a maniac and do anything I could to outsource the prep, whether it is a prep center or whether it was someone locally or I'm sure I could talk my wife into helping out. But I think those would be the biggest keys of being able to start over again and maybe even scale up a little bit faster.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. We're about an hour and 10 minutes in. I would imagine we probably ought to stop there, or we're going to, every time we do this, our episodes are going to get longer and longer and longer.
We have a few seconds to still make this one of our shorter episodes. So we maybe take advantage of that. But it wouldn't be a true grab bag without some random pop culture reference. A little bit, and I wanted to get it in before, but it's going to be a couple weeks after. But there was a streaming war going on a couple weeks ago, where there was a Friday that both the first 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi had premiered on Disney Plus at the same time as the debut of season 4 of Stranger Things. Oh. Are you an Obi-Wan guy, a Stranger Things guy, or are you ain't nobody got time for that guy?
Unfortunately, at the moment, I'm ain't nobody got time for that kind of guy. Okay. I have watched half an episode of season 4 of Stranger Things. And I did that while I was on the exercise bike. However, I will watch both of those. I'll watch the last season of Stranger Things, and I will watch Obi-Wan Kenobi because I like both of them.
Yeah, me too. I started with Obi-Wan.
Okay,
but that's only because of I was trying to keep myself from binging because I was afraid if I started Stranger Things, I think all the episodes all came out. They split it in half. I believe that's how they did it. So what are there 5 or 6 episodes?
Yeah, I think so.
So I took the shorter of the 2. There was only 2 episodes of Obi-Wan, so I knew I could watch it and then get back to work and get back to productivity.
That's a good trick to play on your mind. I like that. I like that thought process. So
yeah, there's a couple times where I'm no good at calling myself on my own bullshit. It's just there are times like Slow Horses. I was like that on Apple TV. Told myself, I'll just watch one episode a night. I'll have it done, and there's 6-8 episodes. I'll have it done in about a week. Now there was 4 a.m. I'm going on the 4th episode, and I was like, I'll just be a little tired tomorrow. One more. I'm a crackhead.
I totally get it. I hate to admit this publicly, and I don't know. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to wish that this is our least listened to episode. But my wife and I have a very guilty pleasure that we share in together, and it is a little bit of reality television every now and again. And she stumbled across this television show called Below Deck or something, where it's about these people who work on yachts. And so you get to watch, cool boats. You get to watch rich people come and have fun. And a lot of them act really weird. They have these strange proclivities. And then, of course, you get all the drama between all the deckhands and stuff like that. And we find ourselves doing the same thing. Last night it was like 12:30 in the morning, and my wife's like, we got to go to bed. And I'm like, babe, there's, these episodes are only 45 minutes. Let's watch one more and we'll be just fine. And she's like, all right, let's do it. But it's always a bad decision the next morning. It's like drinking too much, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I are we're finally getting to the Leftovers on HBO. We're way years behind, but we decided we wanted to have a show together because we just, I've got my office and I usually stay here. And not to mention, I can't stand 90% of the shit that she watches. So,
Yeah.
So we decided we needed a show, and we decided it would be the Leftovers. And it's funny, like there's this dance that we play, and it's, we watch the one episode, and no matter what we've told each other before that episode started, most of the time it's like, oh, let's just get one in tonight, but there's never less than 2 episodes in a row. It's funny. It's like the old stereotype of the stereotypical wife trying to avoid having sex with her husband. That, it's like, she'll come in and she go, "Hey, leftovers?" And it's like, "Oh, I got a headache, honey." Because I don't want to give up that what I know is going to be 2 hours. It's like there's something I've probably procrastinated something. I need to get some work done or something. But it's funny. There's this whole dance like we're back in the 60s or 70s or something.
It's crazy. It's so addictive. I mean, whatever. I'm going to give into it tonight, and I'm going to go binge watch something before I go to bed. But
it wasn't it. Thanks to you, I bought a Calendar of Wisdom, the Tolstoy book, and it was only within the last couple of weeks where he had a good quote that I've taken and absolutely abused. And it said, at some point the work has to end, and usually the work ends with a reward of enjoying yourself. And it was kind of a reminder to, not be all work, and make sure you enjoy the fruits of your labor, so to speak. And boy, I've taken that and run with it.
Oh, that's funny. Well, let's end the show this week with a quote of the week. And I thought, since we talked about recessions and a whole bunch of things that aren't necessarily the happiest, we would go to good old Uncle Warren Buffett and talk about one of his famous quotes. And one of his most famous quotes, in my opinion, is, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. It's what Uncle Warren has done his entire career, and he's one of the top 5 wealthiest people in the world. And even right now, he's doing the exact same thing. You'll notice that Berkshire Hathaway has a ton of cash ready to deploy that they're sitting on when he's ready to, or and so hopefully we can take a little bit of wisdom out of his playbook and crush it during a recession.
It's such great contrarian advice. It's and then you roll the stat in. I think they said since 2002 to today, people who try to time the market, if you had missed the first day, the first 10 days of a positive gain in the market, you would have missed out on somewhere like 52 to 55% of the wealth generated. I mean, it's an unbelievable stat. I mutilated the stat, but look it up if you're interested. I mean, it's unbelievable. The percentage that you would have missed out on. That blows my mind.
Yeah, so it's crazy. All right, that's it for us this week. We will be back next week. There won't be any missing episodes from here on out, at least through the summer. But thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate you being here. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. Hit the like button on the YouTubes. Leave us a review, whether you like it or not. And you know what? I think we're going to start maybe reading some of the reviews we have, because we do have, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so across different platforms. But we're going to start reading some reviews and maybe shouting out some listeners in the next episode. So make sure to drop yours before the next one. So, Chris, thanks for being here again this week. And I'll talk to you next week, man. All right.
Sounds great.
See you later, everybody. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.